It's no secret that the nation's current fiscal crisis is much worse than the Great Recession and more severe than anything that we've seen in decades. People are hurting and people need help. And things are getting worse since Republicans in the US Senate decided to postpone a stimulus package that would help restaurants and other small businesses, cities and states, and the unemployed. The financial shockwaves of this virus continue to ripple through the United States and here in Illinois, often causing the most harm to those least able to afford it. In April of this year alone, the Illinois Department of Employment Security processed more claims than it had in the previous 10 Aprils combined. Even compared to the other worst economic years of the last 2 decades, the 2020 recession has seen almost 3.5 times as many regular unemployment claims compared to the first 9 months of either 2008 or 2001 recessions. And it's not even close. Illinois declared a state of emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic on March 9th. Just days later, IDES passed emergency rules to ease certification requirements for applicants. And I signed an executive order to waive the traditional waiting week for recipients, both of which simplified the claims process and allowed the surge of new applicants to start receiving benefits sooner. Nationwide, state agencies that issue unemployment benefits have become the source of overall economic stimulus for millions of Americans. Not their traditional role by any means, but over just 8 months, they're adapting to this new situation in every way possible. IDES has implemented 5 new federal programs. Normally, these types of programs take up to a year each to get going, but because we're in a crisis, they were put together in a manner of just weeks. Remember that IDES has been a rather small agency that had been slowly diminished over the last 2 decades, with headcount dropping dangerously low from 2012 to 2018. But when the economic crisis came with the pandemic, IDES got to work. The department had to overhaul its website infrastructure, stood up an additional call center with hundreds of new agents, added chatbots and other features to its platforms, and launched a new callback system that entirely transformed the communication process for claimants. As a result, IDES has processed a historic number of claims since March, paying out over $17 billion in benefits to over 1.3 million individuals statewide, more than 16 times the amount of benefits paid in the same period last year. Let me repeat that. That's 16 times the amount of benefits paid in the same period last year. And 2020 isn't over yet. In recent weeks, fewer Illinoisans are claiming regular unemployment benefits. And for some, that's good news because it means that they've gone back into the workforce. But there also are others who are unable to get a job and instead are transitioning into extended pandemic assistance programs. Here's where that leaves us. We now have more Illinoisans claiming pandemic emergency unemployment compensation, the temporary 13-week extension of benefits that Congress passed as part of the CARES Act back in spring, and extended benefits, which Illinois and most other states have provided this year, than at any point in this pandemic. The Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, yet another one, for the self-employed, plus the federally funded extra 13 weeks of PEUC benefits for eligible regular unemployment claimants, plus the 7 weeks of extended benefits for eligible claimants, all of those programs expire literally the day after Christmas. So unless the Republican Senate gets a stimulus bill moving in December, Republicans will be putting a big lump of coal in the Christmas stockings of a whole lot of American families. I can't overstate the implications of this. Without assistance from Congress, 5 weeks from now, there will be no way to replace these benefits for the hundreds of thousands of Illinoisans impacted by these programs, which have become an essential lifeline for people who lost their jobs due to the pandemic. This is incredibly dire. Illinois is not alone in this. A recent report from public policy think tank called the Century Foundation estimates that 12 million Americans will see their benefits begin to expire next month. That's more than half of people currently receiving benefits nationwide. We have an estimated 4.4 million people in the US who have already maxed out on their unemployment support for this year. So the clock is ticking. Without renewed action from Congress, millions of families across the United States will be plunged into far worse economic hardship than they're already facing. And not just in the middle of the holidays, but also in the middle of the worst phase of this pandemic that the nation has yet seen. We will continue to do everything we can at the state level to protect and advocate for our people. But we are extremely limited in our ability to alter unemployment programs, which are operated in partnership with the federal government. Only the federal government can produce the kind of stimulus that we need in order to avoid disaster for many families here. This is another moment that will define our nation. It will be months before we start seeing real economic recovery that comes with distribution of a vaccine to the general public. Spring is an awfully long way off. So call your member of Congress and your senators at 202-224-3121 and let them know you need them to stand up now and help working families across Illinois and across the nation. I'm going to give you that phone number again to call your member of Congress or your senators, 202-224-3121.